procedures and terminology, and then a very good study presentation on hepatocellular carcinoma. I'm going to talk about this. Diabetes. Diabetes is, extremely common, and Pakistan is #1 as far as prevalence is concerned. And the treatment of diabetes is still not very ideal, but it is evolving, and we're getting closer to the better ones. So this I'm going to introduce the concept of diabetes management with what is called TIA, time in range, and how does this co-formulation improve TIA. My disclosures: I'm engaged as speaker from Global Notice and will be paid some honorary. The slides were made by them, but I edited them and I'm responsible for their accuracy. So these are the 4 agenda items. 1, moving beyond HbA1c in diabetes management, and it is now emerging the role of TIR. Then there's something called derived TIR, and then summary and take away home points. Traditionally, this is the history of HbA1c. I will obviously not go into the details. We still use glucose for diagnosis and monitoring. When HbA1c came in, we thought that it is so good, this could replace glucose monitoring, but it hasn't. Glucose monitoring is important, but HbA1c has added to our armamentarium, and this is the theory and the era of HbA1c. First of all, when it was introduced, what is it? A1c is actually glycation of glucose in a non-enzymatic way with beta chain of hemoglobin, and it gives you the average of 3 months. But it has got many limitations. When it was introduced, it was first time used for monitoring how well the diabetes is controlled. And then it was used as diagnostic criteria. You may be surprised. Initially it was used for monitoring purposes, and only in 2010 it was used for the purpose of diagnosis, to define somebody as normal or pre-diabetic or diabetic patient. And then now we set the goals. What should be the goal for most people? What should be the goal for elderly people, people with ischemic heart disease and type 1 diabetes? So various goals are also set based on A1c. So A1c has enjoyed a very good time, and it is still enjoyed. But as I told you earlier, blood glucose monitoring has not, is still there. So these are some of the limitations. Using A1c alone to guide glycemic target has not been optimal, because it does not identify hypos and hypers. Maybe you can ignore few hypers because they do not have acute effects, but hypos can have devastating effects. So this is the major limitation. A1c cannot tell you about hypos. You could have high A1c and still patient may be having hypos. And it can be affected by wide range of conditions and diseases. I'll shortly show you the list. And wide range of glucose can be associated with the same A1c. So apparently, 2 persons having A1c should have the same kind of glycemic control, but actually in real life it could be very, very different. So what are the conditions which can vary the results? Lab technicians, because this test can be done with various techniques, so you can't actually compare one laboratory's A1c with another laboratory, especially if the profile of the laboratory is different. Many hemoglobinopathies, especially beta thalassemia, patient on hemodialysis, patient who had recent blood loss in any form, and patient who has received blood transfusion, because all these things they affect your hemoglobin. So if anything affects hemoglobin, it is also going to affect the hemoglobin A1C. Chronic kidney disease can also affect your A1C, and this is not the complete list. So there are many conditions which can affect A1C, so may not actually reflect the true picture of glycemic control. So that is why it is a time to move from HbA1c to what is called time in range. What is time in range? That's simply defined as it is the time in range, is the percentage of the time a patient is within the glycemic range, which can be defined for individual patients. Generally speaking, the range is from 70 to 180. But this would include fasting state, prandial state, sleeping state, and all states. So if somebody's glucose stays within this range throughout 24 hours, he would have 100% time in range. But of course that is not really possible. And this concept came in with the invention of these CGMs, continuous glucose monitoring devices. We have two of them. This is the one which is available in Pakistan. You attach a scanner here, and this is the reader. And this is called intermittently scanned continuous glucose monitoring. You attach a device here, and you can check your sugar as frequently as you wish. Like having a watch and checking the time maybe every minute. So this is intermittent, but it is not giving you continuous data. And this is the real-time CGM, which is more expensive. This one is available in Pakistan, but this is available in very, very selected centers, more expensive. This is the real-time data is displayed on your computer and maybe also to your doctor. So this is more expensive. These two give you instant value, which is being recorded all the time. So with the invention of CGM, the concept of time in range came in. And this is a little expensive. Now, there is a simpler way, like a derived time in range. You might find this one also a little difficult. So if you check your sugar, self-monitoring of blood glucose 9 times a day. If you're diabetic, you don't have to do it every day. On some selected days, if you check your sugar 9 times a day, then you can calculate the time in range. Like for example, you check 9 times before breakfast, before lunch, and before dinner. That makes 3 times. 90 minutes after each meal, and the time starts when you start the meal. And then at bedtime, at 4 a.m. to rule out any hypos, because that is the first time to have hypos. And then you also do 1 sugar before the breakfast the next day. So that makes 9 values. Please note down, you are not required to do it every day. On certain days, you do this, and then you do this formula. Number of in-range fixed reading. In-range means that any value which is between 70 and 180, and divided by the number of total number of fixed readings divided and multiplied by 100. So with this, you would be able to calculate time in range, time above range, or time below range. So I think this is one relatively simplified form of determining time in range if you do not have CGM. Now, this is, I think, concept. This is a bar. Time in range would mean 70 to 180. I've already told you you could change this reading. For type 1 diabetes, the range would be different. For a pregnant woman, the range would be different. And for an elderly person, frail person, the range would be different. But generally, it is 70 to 180. If it is above that, that is time above range, and there are 2 stages. Above 180 up to 280 is stage 1, and above 280 is stage 2. Again, you can have time below range, stage 1 up to 70, that is usually asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic hypoglycemia, but anything below 70 and below 54 would be dangerous. So this is another type of, so you could actually determine the time in range, time above range, stage 1 or stage 2, time below range, stage 1 or stage 2. So you will have very accurate data. Accordingly, you can adjust the medication. You would know how much time patient spends at low and how much time patient spends at high. The time and range of 7 to 180 usually corresponds with AGO 6.7 to 7%. And 17 hours out of 24, if patient stays at the time and range, it will be considered control. But about, I think,